Counselor's edition of Ril Dil Podcast. I'm your host, Ril Quinn, recording this on a Monday as we discuss the world of sports and pop culture. As always, you can find this podcast where on my YouTube channel or when any podcasts are available. Episode 1057, Knicks In 5, and that's of course where we begin with a near perfect ending to what was a spectacular NBA season. The New York Knicks complete one of the more remarkable runs in NBA history with with a San Antonio Spurs and just a 94 to 90. It was a throwback victory. First time in 3 years that both finals teams have not cracked 100 points, or neither finals team was able to crack 100 points. You got to go back to Game 5, similar fifth and deciding game with Denver and Miami 3 years ago. Um, there's nothing like proving somebody wrong or proving a whole bunch of motherfuckers wrong, and that is what Jalen Brunson, including myself, did during this postseason, and in particular during the finals. Jalen Brunson went out there in a clinching game on the road and simply had one of the greatest clinching performances in NBA Finals history. 45 points, 14 27 from the field, 4-7 from the 3 point line. He scores 45 of his team's 94 points, basically 40, almost half the team's points on a night where Cat was basically non-existent with the foul trouble. Couple of fouls were not his fault. He had foul trouble the last two games, which really took him out of any consideration for the Finals MVP. Though it doesn't take away from just a spectacular postseason that he did have. His advanced numbers and metrics were still off the hook this year, off the hook during this postseason. And at times, he was the Knicks' best player during the postseason. OG came back down to earth. Um, in this particular game, as he was again in contention for Finals MVP, coming into that game five. But this was all about Jalen Brunson. This is all about a guy who has been, proving people wrong basically since high school, maybe even before that. Second round pick. Dallas screws up the situation with not wanting to pay him. Um, you had, and I'm not going to get to the Becky Hammond, who haven't heard people, a lot of people. There were a number of people that felt like Becky Hammond. Um, Small guards, and I wouldn't even call Steph Curry a small guards, but it's rare in NBA history that the best player on a team is a point guard, where you're going to find the best player on a team that is somebody that's under 6'6". Just doesn't happen. It hasn't, like Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, Clyde Frazier. That's the list. Now Jalen Brunson. And Jalen Brunson is not 6'2", by the way. Jalen Brunson is probably 6 foot even, 5'11", 6 foot even. So he goes out there. He ends up solving the San Antonio Spurs. The last three games, he averages 37, almost 38 points a game. Um, really picked San Antonio apart, wore down San Antonio. Um, 37 points, 5 assists on 48, 52, 85 splits. Led the NBA in the playoffs in total points and points per game. Um, and it was again, he changed the culture of one of the worst situations in sports, one of the worst NBA teams, over the last 20 years before he got there in 2023. So he can talk his shit. He can tell you he's not going to do this, but he can tell people basically, if he wanted to kiss his ass, and he would not be wrong. When you perform at this level that he performed at, when you are the biggest reason why your team won the championship, you get to talk your shit and you get to, You get to look at it. You were wrong. You were wrong. You were wrong. You were wrong. Because I guarantee you, had the Knicks lost this series, we would be saying people would still be out there talking about, hey, too small, too small. But for the rest of his life, he no longer has to hear that. The Knicks just showed you that um, you have to be able to win a championship in multiple ways. When the Knicks were at their best during this postseason, it was because of they ran their offense through Cat and OG. Jalen Brunson didn't have as much pressure. Jalen Brunson would be the finisher. And, the shot attempts were around 20, 19 to 20 versus, say, 25 to 26 shot attempts. And in comparisons to previous postseasons, Jalen Brunson did not wear down. The Spurs were the ones that looked tired at the end of this postseason. We'll talk more about that when we get to the Spurs. But the Knicks at the end of this postseason were fresh. They could beat you in many different ways. This time, they win that game 94-90. They win that game because they have one of the best closer in basketball, and they won that game because of some of the great defense that they played. Those are things that we were not able to say, the past couple of years. Their defense was suspect at times, and even Jalen Brunson, with his great ability to close, wore down. Would wear down in postseason, especially late in a series because of how much responsibility that he had, and because Tom Thibodeau basically was only playing like 6 or 7 players, and refused to develop his bench over the course of the season, and which hurt them in the playoffs. To win championships now, you have to have eight. You have to be able to play 8 to 9 people. You have to be minimum go 8 deep, minimum over the course of a postseason. You have to play 9 players. Period. Like OKC will be out here still playing like 10. You'll see the Pacers when they get back next year playing like 10 players, but you have to play 9 players over the course of a postseason. It's too hard. Again, you see teams wear down, injuries happen. You might depend. You have to have guys who can play in different, who can adjust to different matchups when you get in each round. So you have to have depth and quality depth on your team. The New York Knicks, when you think about the postseason run that they had, 16-3, they had the highest point differential in NBA history. They finished the playoffs winning 15 of their last 16 games. 15 in one of their last 16 games, including a record 9-game road winning streak to end the playoffs. Win all 3 games in San Antonio, and really, when you win in New York, and when you can bring, 15, 20,000 fans to an opposing arena, that is an enormous advantage. The Knicks had enormous advantages on the road this year, on the road in the playoffs. Like, they traveled on the road in the playoffs. I've never seen a team travel on the road in the playoffs in the NBA the way the Knicks travel. Lakers, even I don't even remember the Lakers at their height. Um, Even with the Kobe, last couple championships Kobe won. They wasn't traveling like that. They would travel somewhat, but not like that. So Knick fans took over San Antonio on Saturday. When I rewatched the second half yesterday, it was like the last quarter. It was, you thought you were basically at Madison Square Garden, even when San Antonio scored, which was rare, as they had 18 points in the fourth quarter. The Knicks fans basically drowned out the Spurs fans. This team, again, this will be a championship that will age well in NBA history. A dominant run, you're able to win in multiple ways. You take out a team that could win multiple championships. I'm not calling them a dynasty until at least they win their first one, but has the potential to win multiple championships. It has a generational talent in Victor Wembanyama. You take out the big bad Western Conference, and you seize the moment. You seize the opportunity. You seize the moment. This. It had to be this year for the Knicks. It had to be this year. It had to be the year for them to make the finals. And once they got the matchup with San Antonio, it had to be the year that they won the championship. And they played again some of the most dominant basketball in NBA playoff history. We've seen teams have better records in the postseason. Chicago had a 15-2 run. Lakers had a 15-1 run. These Golden State Warriors had a 17-16-1 run. But none of those teams dominated like this. Like you're having clinching games where you're winning by 30. You're having, situations where the point differential was as high as it was, or like the point differential, their point differential, their net rating was 15 and a half points. 15 and a half points was their average margin of victory over the course of the playoffs. That's like NCAA tournament type shit. That's dominant. That's not even that's you're destroying people at that point. And again, to win a championship, you have to be able to play multiple ways. You have to be able to have a regular season team versus and a postseason team. So let's just the Knicks. 53 years is a long time. 53 years is amazing that they went that long without winning a championship. But it just goes to show you how hard it is. And you win one, you never know when the next one is coming. They become the eighth team in 8 years to win a championship. This is where the league is at right now. No dominant teams. You have some great players on some very good teams. This is where the NBA is at. This is parity. The NBA hasn't seen this type of parity since the '70s, where there was a different champion each year. And there are what 2 years, no, 3 years left in the decade, and you know, I you're probably going to see three. You're probably. I would not be surprised if you see three more champions that are different. It would not shock me at all. Matter of fact, you haven't had you know only the Heat and only the Heat and Golden State have appeared in the finals. Excuse me, only the Heat and Boston have appeared in the finals more than once this decade. You had Miami in 2020 and 2020 and 23, and Golden State in 22. Excuse me, Boston in 22 and 24. So not only are you having different champions, you're having, for the most part, different people, different teams who are appearing in the finals. So there's a strong chance that two teams next year that will be in the finals will be completely different teams than what we saw this year. As far as the Spurs goes, I wouldn't overreact to the Spurs losing, um, considering how young they were. Spurs were just doing stuff that just didn't make sense compared to what we have seen in NBA history. Um, the youngest team to ever win an NBA championship was the 76, 77 Blazers of with an average age of 24.2 years. If you look at the top 10, I have it right here. If you look at the top 10 youngest teams in NBA history, you have the Blazers, 77, Philadelphia Warriors, 56 and 56, 1980 Lakers, 1955 Syracuse Nationals, 52 Minneapolis Lakers, 71 Bucks, 75 Golden State Warriors, 15 Golden State Warriors, 53 Minneapolis Lakers, and the 57 Boston Celtics. So, in the last 45 years, well, first of all, all right, the Golden State actually, Oklahoma City is actually second. So you've only had two out of the last 11 teams. The two of the youngest 11 teams in NBA history have only two of them came from teams. Only two of those teams appeared this century that won championships. Like you said, 15 Golden State and 2025 Oklahoma City. Most of the oldest teams, and when you look at the flip side, the 10 oldest teams to win a championship: 98 Bulls, 11 Mavericks, 69 Celtics, 97 Bulls, '07 Spurs, 96 Bulls, 99 Spurs, 13 Heat, 68 Celtics, and 2014 Spurs. So you've had about what, one, two, four of the oldest teams we've seen win championships. Of the 10 oldest teams win championships have won them in this century. So older teams experience still matters. And what we saw with San Antonio, they lose they lose all their games. They lost all the games that they lost were in the fourth quarter. They were bad in clutch games over the course of the postseason. Did not win one clutch game at home in the postseason. They were 0-6 in clutch games in the postseason this year. Okay. They and the thing about it is, from a physical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, if you don't when you don't make runs, if you don't have a lot of playoff runs on, in your under your belt, you're going to wear down as you go deeper in the playoffs. We saw this happen to Anthony Edwards in 24 during the Western Conference Finals. They beat Denver in that epic series in Game 7 on Denver's home court, and a lot of people thought that that would carry over to the Dallas series. Anthony Edwards had a bad series against Dallas. He was worn down physically because he had never been past the second round up until that point in his career. And at that point, like you're talking 2 years ago, he was about he was only like 22, 23. So the Knicks have guys that have been multiple playoff rounds. Uh, Jalen Brunson has been to a conference finals before. Karl Towns has been to a conference finals, had been to a conference finals before. Mikal Bridges had been to an NBA finals before. All these guys have been to multiple playoff rounds over the course of their careers. So you don't just go from not making the playoffs at all to winning a championship. It just doesn't happen in the NBA. It just doesn't happen. Like with a young team, we saw the Celtics what they did in '08, but they were a veteran team and they added Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. But young teams don't win championships just out of nowhere. What the Spurs did this year in getting to the finals was remarkable. Like the Spurs were at least a year or maybe 2 years ahead of schedule. As far as Victor Wembanyama goes, I'm not going to overreact to his performance. He was good, solid, but not great in the finals. His flaws are very clear. Um, he obviously has to physically get stronger. He was wearing down over the course of games. Uh, there were a couple fourth quarters where he looked completely gassed. Um, Again, he missed some free throws in games, had some bad turnovers in a game. That game two with the pass to Castle's back. Um, but overall, the leap he took from last year to this year was absolutely incredible. Um, 22 years old. I think that he moving forward, obviously he needs to find an identity from an offensive standpoint. You can't have your best player. Like if he's the best player, he is the best player on the team, obviously one of the top three players in the league. You can't have a situation where your best player can't go get you a bucket when you need a bucket. You can't give the Victor the ball right now and say, Victor, give me a bucket. He's not able to do that right now at a high level. You can't. He's just not able to do that right now. He cannot go get a bucket when you need it. That can't be the case from your best player or from a player of that of his stature. And that's what happened down the stretch with the Spurs. Like they needed someone to get a bucket, and that was, you are asking De'Aaron Fox to get you a bucket, to get you a bucket. This wasn't going to happen. And the most reliable scorer they had, the guy who was the second best player on the Spurs team during this postseason, was a 20-year-old rookie. And we saw him struggle in the fourth quarter of the last two games. You know why? He's 20 years old. So the Spurs have everything in front of them. They are again ahead of schedule. They obviously will have a major question mark and a dark cloud hanging over them as far as the De'Aaron Fox situation. His contract kicks in next year. If you're the Spurs, you have to find a way to move him. Um, it wasn't like to me, it like his play in the finals. It's beyond how dreadful he was in the finals, but it's also he's just at this point he's just in the way of the development of Harper and Castle. Like he's just in the way. Those minutes, I want those minutes going to Harper. I want Harper should be starting next year. Now, remember, you're gonna have to sign Victor to a super max extension. That's probably gonna be 5 years, $251 million. All Castle probably a max extension next summer, maybe a super max extension if he makes one. If he's all NBA, he's all NBA. 2 summers from now, you're going to have to give Harper probably a max extension, if not a super max extension. You might as well get the jump now on on those situations. As far as having to pay those guys, Devin, De'Aaron Fox cannot be a part of the equation for the Spurs next year. You just can't. Like you have other options. Um, I think like to me, Harper and Castle, if Castle made a huge jump last year from last year to this year. I see no reason why he won't make another jump. Like I honestly think Harper and Castle will be all stars next year. To be perfectly honest with you. And again, at this point, De'Aaron Fox is just to me in the way. He's in the way of their development. Also, they have a draft pick. They have a draft pick. They can trade for guard that can, if they want some more guard depth, they can trade for a guard that doesn't cost a lot of money. Or that's much cheaper that's obviously cheaper than De'Aaron Fox. So they have a lot of options with the amount of draft capital. But tremendous season for the Spurs. Like I said, I did not see this coming. Didn't think that they would beat Oklahoma City. I thought they would be a top six playoff team coming into the season, but there was no way that I thought this team could contend for a championship and really, a couple basically four fourth quarters away from winning a championship. And again, you're a Spurs fan, you're gonna be thinking about game four, up 29. You win game five. That they will be thinking about that for a long time. And I'm not saying they would have won the series had they won that game. The Knicks have been better, have been great on the road. The Knicks have been resilient. But damn, you could have put the Knicks in a put them in a pickle, having lost 2 games, having lost one of the first 2 games, and it would drop back-to-back games at Madison Square Garden. Like the amount of anxiety that would have been and pressure that would have been on the Knicks, it would have been fascinating to see. To be perfectly honest with you, but the Spurs were just not ready. Mitch Johnson mentioned it. He had a rough series. Again, this is his first playoff run as a coach. I've seen many of coaches, new coaches, Spoelstra, Eric Spoelstra included, struggle in their first run to a championship, or their first run to a championship, even with a more veteran laden team that he had in Miami compared to how young this team was. So um, he'll get better as a coach. They have a great program there, a great organization, infrastructure in terms of San Antonio, and I expect them to be certainly contending for a championship next year. Real thoughts: NBA season-ending top five players. So, based off the performance of Victor Wembanyama, I really feel like right now there is no number one player in the NBA right now. I really think there is no best player. Okay. This is how the order I have it in. Again, I can't call Victor Wembanyama the best player when I can't count on you to get a bucket fourth quarter, or we need to stop a run and what have you. I just can't. You just can't be if you're not a closer. If you're not a closer, an effective closer, you can't be considered the best player in the world. You name me the last player. Give me the last best player in the world who was not a above average closer who couldn't close games. It doesn't that guy doesn't exist. The guy doesn't exist. So you can't be the best player in the world if you're not an effective closer. You don't have a go-to offensive move, can't get a bucket in a key spot. SGA lost to Wembanyama in the Spurs in the conference finals, despite him having a great game seven. Didn't have a particularly great series, but he had a phenomenal season and did lead his team, which was injured, to game seven of the Western Conference Finals. I can make a slight case for SGA being the best player in the world, but production for the regular season did drop dramatically season. Nikola Jokic went out in the first round after a spectacular season where he averaged a triple double, led the league in assists and rebounds on excellent efficiency. Lost to a beat up Minnesota team in the first round and got absolutely embarrassed. Got Rudy Gobert basically had him in handcuffs in the first round. Again, and without Anthony Edwards, basically, they lost the series in 6 games. And keep in mind about Joker, has not made it past the second round of the playoffs since they won a championship in 2023. So that's my case for him not being the best player. Luca was not in the playoffs this year, not even a conversation for the best player in the world. Playoffs, Lord, like, you gotta be on the floor. Like you gotta be on the floor. Like LeBron's out there, 41 years old, still had to somewhat carry the team. So that certainly was not a good look for Luca. Spectacular season, but he's not in the conversation for best player. And Jalen Brunson has to be considered top five. Some will put Anthony Edwards over him. Some will try to put like Steph Curry or Kay Cunningham. I'm sorry, Jalen Brunson. He has to be considered top five. Just like I don't see how I could not leave him out of the top five. Um, I couldn't leave him out of the top five. I just like what he's been able to do. Lead the team to even though, and I'll get back, even though there were times during this postseason where Towns was the best player, when OG was the best player. As a over the entire postseason, cumulatively, Jalen Brunson was their best player. And Jalen Brunson is still number one on the call sheet. He's still the number one option that keeps opposing coaches up at night and allows for, you know, Carl Anthony Towns to play one on one, allows for OG to get some of those wide open corner threes that he was getting. So Jalen Brunson is the center of the offense. And I need a bucket in the fourth quarter. I can you know who you can call. Period, point blank. And you look at it, look at Jalen Brunson's production against the Spurs and Wembanyama versus SGA and Anthony Edwards. He ended up solving the Spurs those last three games because he was bad in the first two games, despite the heroics in games one and two with the late fourth, with some big shots in the late in the fourth quarters. He was not playing well those first two games. He was. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I will see you later this week.